Part of your job as an early care and education director may be to write policies. So, in this presentation, I want to talk about what makes a policy effective. Number one, consistency with our mission. Consistency with your mission, vision, and philosophy. And then, after you make sure that your policy is consistent with your mission, vision, and philosophy, then it needs to be stated in an objective and respectful manner. And when we talk about objective and respectful, mean in family and staff friendly language, which is something that will be discussed later. And then you need to make sure you have a consistent formatting. Your policies also need to be reviewed regularly with feedback from both parents and staff. And then you don't just make a policy and put it into place, but you need to make sure that you give notice or information in advance of making a change to all those that are affected. So even after you make policies, sometimes policies, though they're necessary, are difficult to enforce. So one of the things to think about is what makes policies difficult to enforce, and in your specific situation, what policies would you say are the most difficult to enforce and why? So policies are generally easier to enforce when, like I mentioned before, they are tied to our value, mission, and vision, because it incorporates the passion we have for our work into our day-to-day practice. We enforce policies because they help us to carry out our mission and vision, and they are in the best interest of the children, not because licensing regulations mandate them. So one of the things when we are talking about enforcing policies, we need to look at the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law. And this comes from the Director's Link by Holly Elissa Bruno. So one of the things that is said, according to research, is that for child care professionals, whether to enforce the letter of the law or the spirit of the law is oftentimes situational and depends on individual circumstances, where research has shown that sometimes for executives and the majority of men, they believe that you treat everyone the same. What's fair for one is fair for all. So when you are going to enforce the letter of the law, you might ask yourself these questions. Number one, what are the pros of the situation? Then what are the cons of the situation? And which side has more substantial factors? And can you make a logical decision in favor of the weightier side? Now, the benefits of this approach are, number one, that it creates expedient and quick decisions, and it allows for your defense to be based on measurable facts and figures, and demonstrates that you are impersonal by not appearing to favor anyone. It also demonstrates that you are consistent in making and applying rules. So when you make a spirit of the law decision, you take into account the totality of the individual's circumstances. So as opposed to the letter of the law, with the spirit of the law, you take into the account the totality of the individual's circumstances. You look more deeply to find the root cause of the problem, to make a decision tailored to each individual situation. Extenuating circumstances are considered. Spirit of the law decisions are also called equitable decisions. This type of decision requires us to assess on a case-by-case basis what is fair for each unique individual. There is no one-size-fits-all. So when making up your mind about whether you should use a spirit of the law approach, you might ask yourself these questions. What is the person's situation? Were there mitigating circumstances? Did anything beyond the person's control cause the unwanted result? Is this the first offense, or is it a pattern of inappropriate behavior? What effect will this decision have on the person and or family? And will this decision promote the well-being of the whole community? So some of the benefits of this approach include it can create a compassionate and caring environment, and it can allow for an open forum where parents and family members feel free to bring their concerns knowing that they will be fully heard. And it also identifies you as a decision maker with wisdom and compelling interpersonal skills. So that's one thing you need to ask yourself is whether you want to use the letter of the law or the spirit of the law. And also, how do you know when to enforce the letter of the law or the spirit of the law? That is one of the things that you need to think about on a day-to-day basis.